Hello Soundies, welcome to our Sound for Video session. Today's the 19th of September 2021, and it's good to have all of you here today. We are experiencing some wind, so you may hear that in the background here. I don't know, there's a lot we can do about that, but it's kind of whipping around the side of the house there. All right, let's go to our agenda and take a look at what we have going today. First up, we have some audio samples from a couple of new microphones. You see one in the frame right here, but there are two new microphones from a company called 512 Audio, and we will listen to those two microphones. So after that, there will be a quiz, so be prepared for that. I think, don't worry, it's not hard. It's nothing to be scared of, but since we are associated with the online school, we thought it'd probably be a good idea to do a quiz every now and again now. And then, of course, we'll go to our question and answer after that. We have a couple of questions that were submitted ahead of time, and then we'll also go to the chat and answer the questions there. So first up, let's take a look at these two new microphones. Let me tell you a little bit, first of all, about this company, 512 Audio. So we'll switch over to our Mac here. The first thing is, so the name of the company is 512 Audio. They are based in Austin, Texas, which incidentally, in terms of telephone, is the 512 area code. I think that's where they got their name. It's a new company that's started by another audio company, same founder, and that is Warm Audio. So just to give you a little background, Warm Audio, and actually I'll just read the first part here. They have a kind of an elevator pitch here. Warm Audio was founded in 2011 in the garage upon a simple principle, which was to build sonically high-end recording products, but to also make them affordable to the everyday musician and recording engineer. Since inception, founder and president Bryce Young has put together a team of audio experts, blah, 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 so on and so forth. You will notice in the photograph here, if you look down here, this is actually the Warm Audio 2A, which is a pretty clear copy of the Teletronics LA2A, which is a vintage classic compressor. These also appear to be copies of others, and they've also done that with their microphones here. If we look from the, let's see here, actually microphone preamps, there's the Warm Audio 73, which is probably a copy of the Neve 1073 preamps, which are classics, also the EQ, a bunch of others as well. And in terms of microphones, they have the Warm Audio 47, which is a copy of the Neumann U47. They have a U47 Junior, or a U67 copy, a U87 copy, so on and so forth. But in lieu of, so some of those microphones aren't available anymore, but some from the original maker, from Neumann in this case, but also some of them are really expensive. So the U87 AI, for example, I think is a $3,200 microphone, somewhere in there. And you can buy a similar thing here, their copy of it. Let's just take a look and see what they're $599. So you can see very different pricing. And if you're interested, I haven't reviewed any of those microphones. My friend Bandrew over at Podcastage has, so if you're interested in those, you can find out. But in any case, so now they've created this new company called 512 Audio. 512 Audio is focused on an even lower set of price points. So, for example, if we bring it back over to our main camera here, this microphone right here is the 512 Audio Limelight. It is a broadcast dynamic microphone, and this one runs $200 US. And let's get an audio sample of that one first, and then we'll come back and talk about the other one. So I'm running this through the Sound Devices Mix Pre 3, and then that is going, its output is going into the A10 Mini. So that's the audio chain you're hearing here. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over. You may have to adjust your volume. I'm not putting this through any sort of compression. The limiter is on just to avoid clipping, but we don't have any sort of compression on, so it's going to sound quite a bit different than what we have going here. Okay, here we go. Okay, is that coming through okay? Yep, I'm getting a thumbs up. So this is the 512 Audio Limelight Dynamic Broadcast Microphone, and let me just move it a little bit here, maybe get a little noise here. Okay. A couple of, maybe three inches off of the front of the microphone, and it's off at an angle here, 45 degrees roughly. I do not have any sort of high-pass filter turned on, so you will, that's going to be a factor. And then in terms of gain, we have it at 64 dB of gain on the Mix Pre, and it feels like there's actually a little bit more room to gain up beyond that. maybe. Let's take a look here. Here's at 66 dB of gain. And okay, that's about where we want to be, I think. So we're peaking, yeah, we're just every once in a while hitting up against the limiter a little bit. So peaking in the -6 to -8 range. So this is the, again, the 512 Audio Limelight Dynamic Broadcast Microphone. Again, a $200 microphone. What's interesting to me is it looks a lot like kind of like an RE20 or an Electro Voice, which is a $450 broadcast microphone. Sounds a little bit different than that, a little bit of a darker sound to it than the Electro Voice from what I've heard so far. Let me just see how things are going here. But it's a pretty good sound for a $200 microphone, seems to me. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. Go ahead and put those in the chat. Very curious to hear what you all have to say about it as well. All right, what else can I tell you about this microphone? I guess the thing that is interesting to me is that we needed, right now we're at about 66 dB of gain. That's a lot of gain. And wait 1 second here. Yeah, go ahead and put the comments up, the chat up. So the thing that strikes me is that pretty decent mic. So Talon 6 Production says actually sounds quite nice. Jason, yeah, sounds very nice. Nice on your voice from Mark. It does sound a bit dark, completely agree. And in my voice in particular, that's probably a good thing. You need to be very careful about the distance from the mic. True. I think that's true of most dynamics. Sounding good, be interesting to hear it in comparison with a Procaster. Yes, that would be an interesting comparison. Sounds natural. So that's the interesting thing to me. So $200 microphone, you can get a pretty, I think what sounds quite good, but you are going to either need a preamplifier with quite a lot of gain, probably 65 dB. That's where my Universal Audio Apollo X6 tops out at 65 dB of gain, so you'd be running all the way to the top, which is fine. But for the people that are working on a tighter budget, that are, the people that are working with a Zoom H4n, basically it's either a no-go or you're going to need to add a Cloud Lifter or a Fathead Phantom or something like that. So it's kind of an interesting thing because it's a budget microphone. And so most likely the people that are going to buy this are also going to be buying the budget recorders or interfaces, and they're going to need more gain than those can probably provide. So they're probably also going to need a Cloud Lifter or a Fathead. All right. I think we're good on that one. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the other one. It's going to require me standing up and bringing it in here. I didn't have enough room to set everything up, so I'll be right back with you. I am back on the Limelight. Daniel asked, how is this with plosives? So that's a good question. I'm off at 45 degrees. Let's put it right in front of me. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Purple pickled peppers. I missed one of the P's, sorry. Are you hearing the plosives? The poo, poo, poo. Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers. Yeah. Definitely there.
It's not terrible.
Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers. So there's a little sample for you on the plosive front. Let me switch over. Actually, before I switch over, I'll just talk about this one. You can barely see it here. This is the the Skylight, which is the other microphone that they just released. It is a large diaphragm condenser microphone. I would say vintage voiced for sure. You'll hear that pretty clearly once I start talking on it. It does come with a shock mount as well. It's kind of I can't show it up close at this point, but it's a little bit of a looker. It's got sort of the pressed steel wool pop filter. You can see kind of a little bit up here, and kind of an interesting design. And then also a pop shield that fits over the front of the microphone, just holds on with these elastic bands here. So let me switch over to that and give you a sample of that. Now this one, we're going to put it on Danny's voice as well. I don't think this one fits my voice personally, but let me give you a sample. Okay, we are now on the Skylight here. Is that coming in okay? You hearing it? Okay. All right, Skylight is the large diaphragm condenser microphone from 512 Audio. And again, they're aiming these at what they call creators. I think creators is the new term for people that are creating content that are mostly doing it either on a very low budget or self-funded or for fun. And I apologize, I'm a little bit out of the frame here. It's a weirdness about how we have the room set up here, but this is what this sounds like. My impression is very mid-forward and also really sensitive in the sibilance area. So a little bit rough there. I'd have to do some EQ if I were going to use this one regularly. And it's not a lot of low end relative to some other microphones. I mean, if you get really close up on it, of course, you're going to get some proximity effect, but not like some other microphones I've used in any case. So this is the 512 Audio Skylight. And do we have any comments so far in the chat? Let's go ahead and start putting those up and see what people say. Make that I think you sound fine on it. Okay. Oh, not good sounding from Brian. Skylight sounds not as muffled as the other. Yeah, it definitely has definitely emphasizes a lot of the kind of the dialogue and vocal frequencies a lot more, as well as the higher frequencies. So yeah, it's going to sound less muffled and more. Okay. We are hopefully back. Let us know in the chat here if we're back. Oh. Okay, you should be hearing me back on the Skylight now. You're not hearing me on the Skylight.
Oh, wait a minute.
You don't have your headphones on. She didn't have her headphones on. She was saying, I'm not hearing a thing. Okay. We had an interesting thing just happen there. It was actually our ATEM Mini Extreme just froze up. Or the software crashed. I'm not sure which it was, but I think it was the ATEM itself. So that's an interesting thing.
Low res, it says.
It'll should pick back up to normal resolution here. It now says YouTube is reporting excellent connection, so we should be back here soon. So looked like the ATEM Mini Extreme. That was my first failure with an ATEM Mini Extreme or ATEM Mini of any sort. Interesting. I'm hearing some poppling, crackling too. Okay, we're going to switch back over to my main mic. There is a sample for you of the 512 Audio Skylight. So let me just get back over to my regular mic.
Back to normal resolution.
Okay, there we are. Let me just move this mic real quick.
Somebody said
The new microphone killed the live stream, somebody says. All right, there are some samples for you on the 512 Audio microphones. I'll go back and take a look at the chat a little bit later. I'm curious to see all of the things that you all said about it and what your observations are. All right, next we have a quiz. Are we all good? Everyone in the chat saying we're back? Okay. Back. Let me go ahead and switch on over to Izotope here. Okay, we're in Izotope RX. We're in RX8. Incidentally, they just announced that version 9 will come out this fall. I don't know all the details on that, but I'm hoping to find out here pretty soon. But here's our quiz. This was an audio file that was sent over by Tom Mills. So Tom, thanks so much for sharing this with us. Tom is, in this case, was doing some wedding videography. And this is a recording that he came back with and asked, how can I make this sound better? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play this through. It's about 15 seconds, so let's play it through 4 times. And during those 4 times, take a careful listen, and then I want to get your input in the chat on what you would do to make this sound better. So here we go.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is. There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is. There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is. There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is.
Okay. So in the chat, go ahead and start putting your input on what you think would be the best things to do to make this sound a little bit better. While we're waiting for that.
We have a bunch.
Oh, we have a bunch already. Go ahead and put those up. Let's see what we got.
Oh.
Nothing's coming up. There we go.
Okay. Hang on.
Sorry, technical issues with the chat. Okay, do you have one up?
Yeah.
Okay, give us just a second here. The chat computer's giving us a little grief. Well, we didn't expect this today. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and do what we can. So I don't have access to your comments.
I can tell them to you.
Okay, Danny's going to go ahead and read them. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this other microphone up so that you can talk through it.
Try.
Best if you can put that, well, let's see. You're going to need to be pretty close to it.
How about like this? I don't think it's on. Is it on now?
It's on now.
Okay.
Well, now I can't read the, is this all right? I'm off to the side. We have deverb would be nice. Lower the sibilance, lower the reverb, a pop in the right channel, reduce the S, sibilance, deverb, and DS. Light DS or deverb also, reduce reverb. Would you balance the waveform, pop in the right channel, remove some mouth noise? DS, somebody says DS.
Okay. Let's go take a look at those. All right. Let's talk about that pop in the right channel first. I want to just pull something up here. Looking to the sequence of processing steps or order of operations, if you will. Here's some things that we've looked at this before, but RX Izotope actually suggests. Number one, if you have any sort of crackling, clipping, those types of things, you're probably going to want to take care of those first. There's some sort of somebody saying a pop in the right channel. Let's go back and see if we can find that. Back to RX here. I'm going to play through it again and see if we can find that pop in the right channel.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is.
I'm not sure exactly where that is. If whoever identified that, if you can pop that in down along the bottom here, so we have the seconds identified. If you could tell us roughly where you're hearing that, that would be super helpful. De-essing. Well, actually, before we do that, let's go back to our order of operations here. We don't have any sort of clipping as far, visually, certainly we don't in the waveform have any sort of clipping. Nothing is even really approaching 0 dB. So let me just pull up the loudness control. We're at minus 3.9 true peak, so we're fine in terms of clipping, unless something happened earlier in a signal chain, but it doesn't sound to me like it's clipping. Overall, our loudness is at minus 20 LUFS. That's looking good. So we don't have any clipping issues to take care of. Mouth click or mouth declick. Let's go ahead and look for any of those.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is. There's
a click up here at the start, for sure. Let's come over here. I did a video a few weeks ago on declick and mouth declick, and I actually generally find that the declick, if you have a very distinct click prior to dialogue, that the declick plugin typically does a really nice job. And again, sensitivity about halfway, widen the click to about 2.5 milliseconds. We can actually go here into the spectrogram view. It's looking pretty broadband, so we're going to go ahead and leave the frequency skew at 0. Let's go ahead and see what we get. Wow. Visually, it seemed to take care of that. Let's see what happens. I'm going to go zoom back out. Go home. On the waveform, it's not showing there. Let's go ahead and listen again.
There are so many...
Okay, looks like we got it. So that one looks like it's taken care of. Good. Let's go back to our order of operations and see what else we've got coming here. Mouth declick. So mouth declick is going to take care of a lot of my experience with it is it will take care of more of the kind of saliva noises and things like that. So let's have a listen back and see if we're getting much of that.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is.
I'm not hearing a lot of mouth noise. I think the thing that's standing out more to me is the sibilants, the S's. So let's keep moving forward here. Let's see. Probably de-hum. I don't think we really had any hum. There's probably some noise floor. And I would be okay with it. It actually looks like in some ways this has already been processed, or perhaps whatever the recorder was doing, it's cutting off a lot of the higher frequency stuff. I suspect there may have already been a passive de-reverb or something like that. And I think we should talk about that a little bit as well. Philosophy behind when to use de-reverb and when not to. There is some reverb here. Obviously, they're in a church, and you would expect to have some reverb. Remember, this is for a wedding video. I think it's okay for it to sound like it's in a church, as long as it's still understandable. So I think that's the important thing. So I would be careful about trying to remove too much reverb. That's just some thoughts on mine there. But let's go back again to our order of operations. Where are we at here? I think we got the declick taken care of. Did we get any input on that, where that pop was? In the right channel?
Not specifically, but people are saying there's a lot of reverb on my voice.
Yeah, that's because I didn't mute this microphone. That's okay. All right.
There was a comment saying to
allow the reverb a little bit on the voice because it is in a church, just as you mentioned a minute ago.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So that makes sense. Definitely makes sense. All right. So let's keep it going down. So denoise and de-hum. That's where I think we need to make another pass here and just see, is there some noise we need to take care of?
Before you do that,
there is a comment that I think on the right-hand click, it says 2.5 and 6.0.
Okay. We'll take a look at that, 2.5 and 6.0. Let's see what we've got there. Here's 2.5's around right here. 6.0 is right here. Now these may be actually parts of speech, so let's be careful about those.
Elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymn.
Yeah, I think they're called fricatives. But when you have a very hard letter like a C, I think that's what we're hearing here. And I think that's a similar thing up here at 2.5. Let's see what we got.
Elements in your service.
Yeah, I'm not terribly concerned about that. You could go in there and take care of that. I wouldn't take care of the hard C here. That's actually going to change the timbre of that a little bit.
At
145 also.
Okay, 145. Play through it a few times.
Dish, 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 dish.
And here's the one at roughly 2.5.
In your.
I mean, this one we could. Let's do this.
In your.
That's fine. It makes it a little bit softer. I don't think that really messes with things. But the others don't really seem like problematic necessarily to me, especially the one that was a C at the end of the word. That one I would leave there. I think that's this one here.
The music, the music, the music.
Yeah, I don't know that I see that one as particularly problematic as well. In fact, let's go ahead and try and reduce that and see what happens.
The music, the music.
Either way, we're still getting enough of the fricative there, but I don't think it's terribly problematic either way. So you could go either way on that probably. Good, okay. So we got the pops. Now we need to go back and see what we're looking at in terms of overall noise. So again, it looks like there was already a de-reverb pass on this. Let's go ahead and do a high pass filter here. I'm gonna run through it and adjust the high pass filter frequency to see where we can go to make sure that we remove any sort of low-end rumbly stuff without affecting the dialogue. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my EQ. I already have the high-pass filter set at 48 dB per octave. We're using the digital, so that's going to be linear phase, which means it won't create any sort of asymmetry in the waveform. So that's going to work pretty well for us, I think. So I'll play it back and sweep this back and forth.
The hymns. And of course, it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is. There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course, it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is. There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is.
Okay, we just did that. Now you'll notice that just dried up the sound just a tiny bit, got rid of some of the low end stuff, and I think that would be fairly transparent and something we can do there. All right, so let's go ahead and just review where we're at so far, playing through the entire thing one time.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is.
Okay, let's go back to our order of operations here. We took care of the low frequency stuff here. We don't have any bleeding issues as far as I can tell. We don't really have any plosive or wind issues. It's time for de-essing. I think we do definitely need to do some of that. All right, so let's take a look at that. Let's see, de-essing. I have this plugin right here, which is part of the Izotope RX. And we can go with a classic or spectral. This one I don't have as much familiarity with, to be entirely honest. It's just not one I've used. So I'm going to go ahead and start playing through, and we're going to adjust the different settings. We'll see how things come. I can actually turn on the output S only, which is pretty helpful to kind of get a sense for how things are sounding. So here we go.
And of course it is traditional. traditional to get married in church. So traditional service. It is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is. There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is. There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church. There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is.
Whew. I'm not as familiar with this de-esser, so I'm struggling a little bit to find the right spot, but this is probably about where I would go. There is plenty of sibilants there, and I'm going to go ahead and hold on this. Let me go ahead and pull up the de-esser that I typically use, which is actually down here. It's part of Izotope Nectar, and I will go ahead and turn this on and show you how this one works. Okay, here we go.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is. There are so many...
That's about where I would go with this. This is a similar thing. You can change the cutoff frequency. We might drop it down to 4.5. Let's do another run through.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is. There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is.
Okay, it's interesting. So we went to -9 on the threshold. We go back up to this de-esser. We ended up at -9.5. So that's roughly based on my hearing where we would do that. So let's go ahead and render. Okay, here's where we're at.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at dialogue de-reverb. I want to run this by you just so you can get a sense for what this will do. Let's go with maybe general reduction. Ooh, we're going to have to adjust this, but here we go.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is. There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is.
Okay, here's my personal take. Everyone, again, this is somewhat subjective, so I don't want to give anyone the impression that the way I'm doing it is the right way, but my sense is I probably wouldn't do any sort of de-reverb. If I did some, I would do the max reduction of about 4 dB. Beyond that, it starts to sound a little bit unnatural to me, so I wanted to bring that out a little bit. You're going to be reverby, but go ahead.
There are some interesting comments.
Okay.
So we have one that sounds like an old stone reverb, but it's a little too strong for my liking. And this is from a lifelong church sound engineer. This was before you started working on all the reverb. And then we have a comment, need to be careful when editing a live video soundtrack that one doesn't cause discontinuity between what the eyes see and the ears hear. And then somebody else was like, yes, not make it sound like a studio recording.
Agreed.
And then it's nice to have a bit left in there reverb since it's a church thing.
Yes.
So
agreed on all fronts. Yeah, I think in my case, so, to whomever, and I apologize for our chat being problematic here for us right now, but to whomever said that, a bit too much reverb for my taste and having worked in churches, not totally agree. I mean, if that's your sense, by all means, I probably wouldn't do more than about 4 dB of attenuation with this particular plugin here. Just trying to kind of give my sense on that.
then we have a question for an experiment. Can we try Danny's mic with yours muted, Curtis? I'm not convinced we're hearing spill. Sounds more like loop back.
Okay, so on the screen, you're going to see the ATEM control come up.
And I just talk? Well, I'm not. I don't think I'm on. I am on. Okay, well, that's pretty different. So here I am talking into this mic and see what you think. I'm still talking. I'm talking into the mic. I don't know what to say, which is why I keep repeating myself.
Yeah, we're definitely getting spill. So that's what that is there. So I wasn't muting because I didn't want to go back to the ATEM software control, and this is maybe a case for running ATEM software control on a different computer than we're doing the demonstration from, so we can do the muting. In any case, thank you everyone for your input on that. So yeah, I think as far as dialogue de-reverb, I think this consensus here is probably don't do a lot. I think when we ran it through with a much heavier reduction, anything beyond -8, definitely it started to have this very dry sound and then almost a sort of pumping sound once you got down below that. But if you're finding however much reverb is there right now is a little too much, my take on it would be fairly light pass. So something like what we have here with a -4, -8 at the most. So, okay, Danny wants to say something, so I'm going to go back into ATEM control, mute myself.
Just another order of operations. Wouldn't you want to deverb before de-essing if you wanted to deverb?
Yes, you would. And the reason I did it out of order is because I knew we needed to do de-essing, but I wasn't convinced that I wanted to do any de-reverb. In fact, I was pretty sure I didn't want to. I think we're listening to it now. I would probably be willing to do a little bit, but probably not too much. So let's go ahead and do a final run through here. I'm going to undo everything down here in the bottom corner. We can go back to the initial state.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is.
Okay, now with everything applied.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is.
Okay, so that's about where I would take it. I think that there's, again, there's plenty of subjectivity in here. You could do things to taste. Don't take anything that I say here as you must do it this way, because I certainly don't intend it that way. But those are some ideas on ways to approach it. And I think really the secret is here to do a lot. It almost sounded a little pumpy to the end to me, so I'm not sure. I'm not 100% convinced that I would do it exactly this way. I don't know what was causing that. Maybe it was the EQ. I wouldn't think the EQ would do that. But in any case, maybe it was this. This was the DS. Yeah, this was the de-esser here. Let's just go back a step and see what happens without the de-esser.
There are so many traditional elements in your service, the flowers, the music, the hymns, and of course it is traditional to get married in the bride's home church, which Holy Trinity most certainly is.
Yeah, we might have been a little too aggressive on the de-esser. This is one of those tricky ones where you have the sibilance and the reverberation kind of mixed up together. So when you apply heavy de-essing, it's going to affect that reverberation some too, and then you start getting that kind of pumping effect. So this is one of those where I think you have to be really careful about how much you apply. A lot of times when I go in and do de-essing, let me pull that back up again here. I'm usually only trying to do it, trying to keep the threshold in the -5 range. I mean, of course, it depends on the overall amplitude of your audio. But if I'm having to go beyond 5 or 6, I've got kind of bigger problems in a lot of cases. Again, if I've got things at least at, if I'm starting with the audio somewhere around -24 LUFS, if I'm having to go beyond -6, I've got some really heavy sibilants. And that may be a case where you're just going to have to take the edge off and move on. Otherwise, you're going to start to create this pumping effect. Because basically, what a de-esser is really, it's pretty much a compressor, but for certain frequencies, just for the higher frequencies. So always keep that in mind. Okay, let's head on back to our agenda here and take a look at what we've got as far as questions are concerned. First up, from Mark L. I will be broadcasting an event that has multiple panel discussions of up to 4 people each time. I am planning to use the auto mix function of the Zoom F8N, and we are planning to use desk mics because we don't have enough time to put lavs on the guests. What mics should we use? We already have 2 AT875Rs and are considering buying 2 more for this job. Do you have any better suggestions or general guidance on how to best mic up a panel? Yeah, my thoughts on the panels. I mean, ideally, I like to use dynamic microphones if I'm going to use something on the desk. And so that's the first thing. That just, if it's a live panel where you're also going to be reinforcing the sound with a PA system, feedback becomes a challenge sometimes. So dynamic microphones make that job even easier. But if you position your PA system, your speakers, your loudspeakers in particular, appropriately, then using a condenser microphone like an AT875R would be fine. I think those could be fine. But again, I think generally what I prefer to do is dynamic microphones, and that's generally my approach. But I think if you bought 2 more of those AT875Rs, if you position them correctly, if you do not position the PA speakers, if there are any behind the people that are speaking, so you don't want that audio getting back into their microphones and just causing feedback. Those are kind of the biggest things. Also, I don't know how you have the people positioned on the panel, but ideally, if you can get those microphones pointed away from each other and using the nulls on each of the microphones, that would be really helpful for you as well. But what I mean is that the backs of the microphones towards the other people or away from the other people, maybe at a 75-degree angle, because that's where the nulls are on those microphones. That is to say, the part of the polar pattern that's most resistant to picking up sound. So those are some of my thoughts on that. But Mark, I think I think the AT875Rs would probably work well. I have there's a hand up here. 1 second, we're going to mute my microphone and open Danny's microphone.
Just an addendum from Mark L. He says no PA.
Okay, no PA system, so that takes that issue away. Yeah, so I think putting them at a table. If ideally, I'd put them at kind of in a U shape around the table, if possible. And that should work pretty nicely. And I think the AT875Rs should be just fine. Okay, moving on to our next question here from Jeff. Now, I need to give some background, and this is tiny print, I realize. It's a really long question, so let me just read it for you here and get you some of the background info. All right. Jeff says, what would you do? I was recording an interview for a non-narrative doc piece with interviews and lots of run and gun moments you can't duplicate, wherein I had Electro LMB on the interviewee and my SRC in diversity. She was sitting down and wearing a synthetic-like thin outer shirt and another equally synthetic undershirt, as well as a dangly necklace. 1 second here. I need to clear my throat and take a drink. Apologies. 1 second. Coming on back. The topic of the piece was very sensitive in nature, emotional content. The director was very high-strung, the kind where the crew is walking on eggshells the whole time. I asked the subject if she was willing to change her shirt to something more of a cotton nature. She was not willing and wanted to be in that particular outfit. I asked her if she was willing to remove her necklace. She was unwilling because of a very personal nature. I ended up mounting my COS 11D with the Bumblebee Lav concealer under the lapel of her outer shirt, again, due to the sensitive nature and not wanting to go for the skin, as well as not wanting to bury the mic under a couple of shirts. I taped the wire down on the inside of the outer shirt in 4 places and concealed the pack on the belt clip under it all. All good there. It all sounded okay at the start. However, as we were recording, the performance was intense and emotional, and there was no way I was going to interrupt the performance and vibe to try and address the many scratchy hits my mic was taking between her clothing rustle and her necklace making noise. The main reason for my decision was that I knew I was getting it clean off the boom mic I had over her. The interview had 2 breaks, and on the breaks I made attempts to move the lav into new positions to minimize the synthetic shirt noises I was hearing. The third take was the cleanest, but the first 2 sections of the interview have a lot of lav noise from the shirts rubbing and her movements. In hindsight, I perhaps should have taped the outer shell of the Bumblebee to her inner shirt and pin the 2 shirts together with adhesive to remove that noise. The necklace noise would still be there, and she was moving and animated in her performance. My question: this whole time I knew I had it on the boom. The boom track is absolutely clean and beautiful, thank you MKH50. So in the end I have the performance. In that moment, due to the intensity of the interview, the intensity of the director, and knowing I had it on the boom, I made the decision to not tell the director of the lav problem, mainly because I kept futzing with it to no avail on the breaks. I knew I was capturing the performance on the boom, so I thought rather than worrying the director unnecessarily, making them doubt anything, I made a professional decision that, quote, I have it, and that the lav issues were, in the moment, with the time we had, insurmountable. Is this the right move? Let's stop there. Let's get everyone's input on the chat. I'm curious to see what you all think, and I've been in similar situations before, so I definitely know how you feel, Jeff. What's interesting here is that, so this is a documentary, so you're working with talent that, I don't think the production purchased any. Let's go to the main camera here. I'm having problems with this iPad. So the main talent here was wearing her own clothing, I assume, her own wardrobe. So, and she, it sounds like you kindly asked if she could wear something else, and she basically said nope. So you had to work with what you had. Now, I think it's great that you had a boom microphone, because that is what basically saved this production or this part of the shoot. So good on you for doing that. I agree with you, actually. I would not have interrupted the director or the performance, because, again, it sounds like you captured something magical that's really important for the documentary film. So I would have done the same thing. I would just, on my sound report, I would make it very clear to post-production, use the boom mic, absolutely do not use the lavalier mic. Or I guess you should never tell them what to do, but what you could say is lots of hits and clothing rustle on lav mic. Boom mic is clean. You can do that on each of on your sound report, and that'll make it easier for them, so they won't necessarily have to waste their time listening through both of the tracks and figuring out which one they want to use. So that's what I would do. And I agree, it's not, as long as you knew you were getting it on the boom microphone, the reason that you're there, the reason that you're hired and filling the role of the sound mixer is that you're supposed to make those decisions about what is worth stopping the production for. And because you had it on the boom mic, I would be with you. I would not have stopped the production for that. So I think you made the right call. In a debrief at the end of the day with the director, I would say, hey, just so you're aware, we were taking all sorts of hits. There was no way with the top that she was wearing that I could get clean on the lav mic. So we do have clean boom mic. I think we have a great track for post-production, so we're all good. That's how I would approach it. Give me just a second. Danny wants to convey something here.
Okay, we have several interesting comments. We have, I believe the director should always be told. We have, yes, that was the right move. We have, agreed, don't stop the production. Tape necklaces with two-sided and let them know it will cause a problem if you don't. I've been in the same position, did exactly the same. Then there was a question, was the lav cable looped? Overhand knot. It can greatly reduce or eliminate rustling sounds, not just for strain relief. If in capital letters, as in big if you're certain you have it on the boom. That's the same person who said, yes, it was the right move. If you're certain you have it on the boom. Yes, right move. Yes, loop on lav cable tape down. I wouldn't stop the production, but I would tell director though, what I was doing. That's the person who said, I believe the director should always be told. I hope everybody could hear that okay. I have to have my head sideways to be able to read the questions or read the comments and talk into the mic.
Okay, good. I think there's some great input there. Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to be careful in terms of how much you pull in the director, and you have to make a call on the spot. I would probably do the same thing too. Probably after the first take, I would run over to the director and say, "Hey, I got solid audio on the boom. I'm getting lots of scratches on her lav mic. I'm going to try and reposition the mic to see if we can do better. I can't guarantee that we can just because of the nature of that fabric. Just wanted to let you know. I think we're good." And if the director wants to make a different call at that point, then that's great. But yeah, at some point, I mean, I'm not trying to hide anything from the director when I said that, you're hired as the mixer and it's your job to make the tough calls on as far as sound is concerned. And then if you are running into some sort of insurmountable issue, certainly. So if you weren't getting good, if you only had the wireless, the wires, the lav mic, in other words, and you didn't have the boom microphone, absolutely, you would have needed to just say, "I'm sorry to stop this," and go to the director and say, this is not working. I either need to put up a boom mic or we need to change that top so I can get clean sound. So it is your job to make sure that the director is successful. And so just keep open lines of communication. But I don't think if you're getting good audio on the boom, I would have during the first break let the director know about that, just to assure them I have great sound on the boom. I think we're fine. I'm getting all sorts of clothing rustle on the shirt. I'm going to try and do what I can about that, but I don't have a lot of hope that we can clean that up. So just so you're aware, good on the boom, think we're fine. If you're okay with that, we're going to keep going. Just 1 second here.
Here's an interesting comment. In the future, this kind of situation should be discussed in preparation meetings to establish what to do. That way the director is aware of things.
I think that's good advice too, in as much as that's possible. And you don't have to develop a, high-strung directors. There are plenty of high-strung directors out there, but they have, they have a hard job and they're trying to do their best. So, yeah, ideally, you should have a protocol or an agreement about, when should I come to you and let you know we have a problem? At what, if I'm positive, and you could just cite this exact scenario. You could say, if I'm positive that I'm getting good audio on the boom mic, but I can't, because of the wardrobe of the talent, I'm not able to get good wireless lav mic. Do you want me to bug you on that, or just let you know, or stop the production? What do you want to do? How do you want to handle that? Typically, and you could also say, this is how I typically handle that. After the first take, I would come to you and let you know we're good on the boom, not getting audio on the lav because of clothing rustle. If you're okay with it, I'm okay moving ahead. I'm going to try to reposition that lav mic and see what we can do. I have never found, this is interesting, I'll have to do some more experimenting. The little overhand loop, I have never found that to reduce a lot of clothing rustle. I mean, I usually do it, but I still get plenty of clothing rustle even with those loops, but I'll have to do some more experimenting and see if I can get that to work a little bit more effectively there. Looks like Danny has something else to say. 1 second.
Just a quick shout out to Rob Christiansen and Matt Ruff for the super chats. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. Okay. We have one more.
And Mark Randall. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. All right. Thanks, everybody, for your input on that one. That's a tough one. And Jeff, thanks so much for sharing that. That's a very common thing to find in production sound. And, knowing the best way to handle that is, you got to be prepared for those kind of things. And so thanks for sharing. I think personally you did a good job. Maybe open those channels of communication a little bit more up front if possible. Also, you can also talk in any sort of pre-production meetings, talk with the director about wardrobe. That can be really helpful, especially on documentaries. It's not something that gets considered a whole lot on documentaries. And even on narratives, you really have to be clear on, if you can, talk to the whoever's in charge of wardrobe for the piece and get a sense for what's coming and build that rapport with the wardrobe person so that you're able to get in there and make whatever changes are necessary. Okay. We're almost out of time, but do you have any questions that we want to address here? Danny's taking a look here for us. And we're limping along with our ATEM Mini Extreme ISO.
There are a couple. Documents are difficult because you don't want to miss things. I have always wanted to know as a director. Because you don't want to miss things. I've always wanted to know as a director. I don't worry and ask people to repeat things when noises happen.
Okay.
There was a specific question earlier on. Give me just a few seconds to find it.
Okay. Good. Thanks for the input on that.
Okay. This is David G. says, using my Mix Pre 3.2, I have found out that using it with Panasonic S1, is that right? Pana S1, with 32 bits in the Mix Pre, when the sound is output to the S1 via jack, even if I select 96 kilohertz, it comes back to 46 kilohertz in the Mix Pre. I'm not sure what the question is.
So you're recording 32-bit float, 96 kilohertz in the Mix Pre, but when you connect it to your Panasonic S1H, it moves the Mix Pre back to 48 kilohertz? I've never experienced that, so I'm not sure. And I don't have an S1H to test, or an S1. Yeah, I'm really not sure on that. That's probably one you'll want to contact Sound Devices and see what they can help out with there. But I've never heard of connecting to a camera via an analog output, changing the sample rate on the Mix Pre. So Danny's looking for some more here. One second.
It says yes.
Yes, and it becomes gray.
Okay, so going to 32-bit float. I've got a Mix Pre in front of me. Give me just a second here. I don't know if I can change the mode here. Danny won't be able to say anything else for the next, well, we're out of time. But let me just quickly check here. I'm going to go into the menu, into the system menu. I'm going to go into the record menu. I am going to change the sample rate to 96 kilohertz. Okay. It has to restart the unit. I'm on version 7.14 of the Mix Pre firmware. I'm also going to go into the record menu and change the bit depth to 32-bit float. It's going to restart. Okay, now it's restarted. So now I go into my record menu just to confirm. My sample rate is 96 kilohertz. My bit depth is 32-bit float, and I'm outputting audio to the ATEM Mini, and it seems to be fine. Nothing is grayed out. So what you might want to do is you can email me, curtis@learnlightandsound.com. If you can take photos of your screen and what you're seeing and what the problem is, I'm happy to take a closer look at that and see what we can do on that. All right. Danny wants to say one more thing. Give me just a second. Oh, we've muddled things up here.
Can I just tell you?
Danny's going to tell me one moment.
Okay. So on a follow-on to the overhand knot, the overhand knot is different from just looping the cable. The overlapping aspect of the knot mechanically damps vibrations traveling along the cable.
Okay, so you actually have to tie it in a knot, in an overhand knot. So, like a half hitch basically, but leave some a fairly sizable loop, and then that does some damping. Okay, that's interesting. So that should eliminate some of the vibrations on the cable closer to the transmitter pack. But if the vibration, the friction is happening on the microphone itself or any place on the cable up to that point, you'll still get some of that. So I can see that. That definitely makes sense from a logical standpoint. All right, we're going to go ahead and limp off stage here after a hardware failure and doing our best to keep it going. Thanks, everybody, for coming to today's live stream. Get out there and make some great sound, and we'll talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody.
Reason for